Catholic television.
Television are images of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, arriving in this room with G7 leaders. So the G7 is a forum of economically developed countries that brings together Italy, Canada, France, Germany, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States of America. The Pope is arriving now. He's shaking some hands. He's shaking hands there with the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. And he's going to go around, looks like, and shake everybody's hand, and then he's going to be delivering a speech on artificial intelligence. He's the first ever Pope to address a G7 forum, and this one is being held in Italy, so not too far from where he's based in Rome. It's being held in Apulia, in the south of Italy. And the Pope now, for those of you who are following on radio and so don't have the images, the Pope is making a bit of a tour of the room, shaking hands. He just embraced there Javier Milei, the leader of Argentina, who he met a few months ago in the Vatican. Now he's greeting Joe Biden, the US president, and they're taking a moment to speak, exchange a few words. This is the longest greeting yet, actually, of all the world leaders the Pope is giving to Joe Biden. They're both smiling. The Pope, of course, is in a wheelchair. He's been suffering with some knee problems for a few years now. Now he greets the Turkish president or prime minister, I'm not quite sure. That's Tayyip Erdogan. And again, taking a moment to speak to him. The Pope giving him a thumbs up. And he's about halfway round the table now, greeting still the world leaders gathered here. And then, as I said, he'll be giving a speech on artificial intelligence. Standing behind the Pope is the Italian PM, Giorgia Meloni. She has been in power initially for, I think, about 2 years now, and she's the host of this G7 summit. Pope now greeting Luis Inácio da Silva, that's the head of Portugal, the president of Portugal, and now Canada's PM, Justin Trudeau. I'm not sure actually of the name of this gentleman here, but the Pope still continuing to make this little tour of the room. It's the Sala Arena in this place in Puglia, Italy, that's been chosen as the venue for the G7 summit. A little delay in starting the Pope's speech today. It was scheduled to start at about 2:15 Rome time. It's now coming up for 3 o'clock Rome time. Apologies again to those of you who tuned into our earlier broadcast, which we had to interrupt briefly. The Pope now greeting UK PM Rishi Sunak, who's of course in the middle of an election campaign. The elections held on the 4th of July in the UK. And now greeting Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, who's just been re-elected. So he's just gone through what Mr. Sunak is currently experiencing. And he won, I believe, a third term, Mr. Modi, but with a much smaller majority than he'd achieved on previous occasions. The Pope has now nearly completed this circuit of the leaders' table here. So you might have noticed, I said at the beginning that the members of the G7 are Italy, Canada, France, Germany, Japan, the United Kingdom, the United States of America. There are a lot more leaders than just the leaders of those countries here. They've, of course, been invited by Mrs. Meloni, who is hosting this summit. And now the Pope has arrived, so he's getting up from his wheelchair, taking a seat, and I think we'll be getting started shortly with the Holy Father's speech on artificial intelligence. It's expected to last round about 30-40 minutes. We'll see exactly. I and my colleague Francesco Moro will be providing you with a simultaneous English language translation. As now the Pope takes a seat, all the other world leaders take a seat. So as we wait to hear from the Holy Father, a reminder that our broadcast will finish after the Pope finishes speaking, but if you want to continue to follow the images without an English translation, you can do that. I think that should be possible through our website, vaticannews.va. The Pope will be staying after he finishes the speech to listen to other interventions. Now, headphones being put on, and I think we're expecting the Pope to start imminently. So again, as I said, artificial intelligence to be the topic of the speech from the Pope. And now, Giorgia Meloni.
And thank you very much for accepting the invitation to participate in the G7 outreach session here in Puglia under Italian presidency. We didn't choose this place by chance. We chose it because Puglia is a southern region of Italy, and because it is a land that has historically represented a bridge between West and East, a place of dialogue in the Middle Sea that through Northern Africa and the Middle East connects the two great maritime spaces of the globe, the Atlantic on one side and the Indo-Pacific on the other. This place and this wide outreach that we wanted to invite are a clear message from the G7 under Italian presidency. We will never accept the narrative that wants the West against the rest. We know we can only deal with the global challenges we are facing if we are able to cooperate with respect and with a peer-to-peer approach. Among the many global challenges that we are called out to face, in this period we decided to dedicate the outreach session to those that we consider very pressing. Artificial intelligence, first of all, with the opportunities it opens up and the risks it hides. The Mediterranean, an area of crisis and a place of dialogue. The African continent, with which we work to build a completely new cooperation as equals, and obviously the need to deal without ideological approaches with climate change, which impact, above all, on the nations of the Global South. We will have two keynote speakers to start our work. His Holiness, Pope Francis, who gave us the great honor to participate in our working session and will share with us his point of view on artificial intelligence. It is the first time that a pontiff participates in a meeting of the Group of Seven, and this inevitably makes today's appointment a historic moment. So I will never thank you enough for being here, Your Holiness. And then we will have His Excellency Mohamed Ould Ghazouani, President of Mauritania and rotating chair of the African Union, who will bring the point of view of African nations on the expectations of the continent. I stop here. Thank you again, Your Holiness. The floor is yours.
And Pope Francis now will be beginning his speech.
Grazie tante per la vostra attenzione.
Thank you all for your attention. I have two versions here, the long one and the short one. I'm going to read the short one.
L'intelligenza artificiale
Artificial intelligence
uno strumento affascinante.
Is a fascinating and fearsome tool.
Saluto tutti voi, leader del forum intergovernativo.
Hello to all of you, leaders of the Intergovernmental Forum of the G7.
L'onorevole Giorgia Meloni.
Hello to the Honourable Giorgia Meloni.
Saluto la segretaria dell'Unione Europea.
Hello to the Secretary of the European Union. Hello to the President, to the King, and to all of those who are present.
La riflessione è gli effetti dell'intelligenza artificiale.
The reflection is the effects of artificial intelligence on the future of humanity. Sacred Scripture attests that God bestowed His Spirit upon human beings so that they might have skill and understanding and knowledge in every craft. Science and technology are therefore brilliant products of the creative potential of human beings. Indeed, artificial intelligence arises precisely from the use of this God-given creative potential.
Quest'ultima, come è noto, è uno strumento estremamente potente
As we know, artificial intelligence is an extremely powerful tool employed in many kinds of human activity, from medicine to the world of work, from culture to the field of communications, and from education to politics. It is now safe to assume that its use will increasingly influence the way we live, our social relationships, and even the way we conceive of our identity as human beings. The question of artificial intelligence, however, is often perceived as ambiguous. On the one hand, it generates excitement for the possibilities it offers, while on the other it gives rise to fear for the consequences it foreshadows. In this regard, we could say that all of us, albeit to varying degrees, experience two emotions. We are enthusiastic when we imagine the advances that can result from artificial intelligence, but at the same time, we are fearful when we acknowledge the dangers inherent in its use. After all, we cannot doubt that the advent of artificial intelligence represents a true cognitive industrial revolution, which will contribute to the creation of a new social system characterized by complex, epochal transformations. For example, artificial intelligence could enable a democratization of access to knowledge, the exponential advancement of scientific research, and the possibility of giving demanding and arduous work to machines. Yet at the same time, it could bring with it a greater injustice between advanced and developing nations, or between dominant and oppressed social classes, raising the dangerous possibility that a throwaway culture be preferred to a culture of encounter.
The significance of these complex transformations is clearly linked to the rapid technological development of artificial intelligence itself. It is precisely this powerful technological progress that makes artificial intelligence at the same time an exciting and fearsome tool and demands a reflection that is up to the challenge it presents. In this regard, perhaps we could start from the observation that artificial intelligence is, above all else, a tool. And it goes without saying that the benefits or harm it will bring will depend on its use. This is surely the case, for it has been this way with every tool fashioned by human beings since the dawn of time. Our capacity to fashion tools in a quantity and a complexity that is unparalleled among living beings speaks of a techno-human condition. Human beings have always maintained a relationship with the environment that is mediated by the tools they gradually produced. It is not possible to separate the history of men and women and of civilization from the history of these tools. Some have wanted to read into this a kind of shortcoming, a deficit with human beings, as if, because of this deficiency, they were forced to create technology. A careful and objective view, however, shows us the opposite. We experience a state of outwardness with respect to our biological being. We are beings inclined toward what lies outside of us. Indeed, we are radically open to the beyond. Our openness to others and to God originates from this reality, as does the creative potential of our intelligence with regard to culture and beauty. Ultimately, our technical capacity also stems from this fact. Technology, then, is a sign of our orientation towards the future. The use of our tools, however, is not always directed solely to the good. Even if human beings within themselves feel a call to the beyond, and to knowledge as an instrument of good for the service of our brothers and sisters and our common home, this does not always happen. Due to its radical freedom, humanity has not infrequently corrupted the purposes of its being, turning itself into an enemy of itself and of the planet. The same fate may befall technological tools, only if their true purpose of serving humanity is ensured will such tools reveal not only the unique grandeur and dignity of men and women, but also the command they have received to till and keep. That's a quote from Genesis. To till and keep the planet and all its inhabitants. To speak of technology is to speak of what it means to be human, and thus of our singular status as beings who possess both freedom and responsibility. This means speaking about ethics. You can't separate the two things. In fact,
artificial intelligence, however, is a still more complex tool. I would almost say that we are dealing with a tool sui generis. While the use of a simple tool like a knife is under the control of the person who uses it, and its use for the good depends only on that person, artificial intelligence, on the other hand, can autonomously adapt to the task assigned to it, and if designed this way can make choices independent of the person in order to achieve the intended goal. It should always be remembered that the machine can, in some ways, and by these new methods, produce algorithmic choices. The machine makes a technical choice among several possibilities based either on well-defined criteria or on statistical inferences. Human beings, however, not only choose, but in their hearts are capable of deciding. A decision is what we might call a more strategic element of a choice and demands a practical evaluation. At times, frequently, amid the difficult task of governing, we are called upon to make decisions that have consequences for many people. We would condemn humanity to a future without hope if we took away people's ability to make decisions about themselves and their lives by dooming them to depend on the choices of machines. We need to ensure and safeguard a space for proper human control over the choices made by artificial intelligence programs. Human dignity itself depends on it. Precisely in this regard, allow me to insist. In light of the tragedy that is armed conflict, it is urgent to reconsider the development and use of devices like the so-called lethal autonomous weapons, and ultimately ban their use. This starts from an effective and concrete commitment to introduce ever greater and proper human control. No machine should ever choose to take the life of a human being.
Rimettere al centro la dignità della persona in vista di una proposta etica condivisa. A quanto ho già detto, va ora aggiunta un'osservazione più generale.
A more general observation should now be added to what we have already said. The season of technological innovation in which we are currently living is accompanied by a particular and unprecedented social situation in which it is increasingly difficult to find agreement on the major issues concerning social life, even in communities characterized by social cultural continuity. Heated debates and arguments often arise, making it difficult to produce shared reflections on political solutions aiming at seeking what is good and just.
Del valore della dignità della persona umana rischia di essere il più grande vulnus nell'implementazione e nello sviluppo di questi sistemi. Non dobbiamo dimenticare infatti che nessuna innovazione è neutrale. Nessuna innovazione è neutrale. La tecnologia nasce.
Indeed, we must remember that no innovation is neutral. Technology is born for a purpose and, in its impact on human society, always represents a form of order in social relations and an arrangement of power, thus enabling certain people to perform specific actions while preventing others from performing different ones. In a more or less explicit way, this constitutive power dimension of technology always includes the worldview of those who invented and developed it. This likewise applies to artificial intelligence programs. In order for them to be instruments for building up the good and a better tomorrow, they must always be aimed at the good of every human being. They must have an ethical inspiration. Moreover, an ethical decision is the one that takes into account not only an action's outcomes but also the values at stake and the duties that derive from those values. This is why I welcomed both the 2020 signing in Rome of the Rome Call for AI Ethics and its support for that type of ethical moderation of algorithms and artificial intelligence programs that I call alga ethics. In a pluralistic and global context, where we see different sensitivities and multiple hierarchies in the scale of values, it might seem difficult to find a single hierarchy of values. Yet, in ethical analysis, we can also make use of other types of tools. If we struggle to define a single set of global values, we can, however, find shared principles with which to address and resolve dilemmas or conflicts regarding how to live.
E per ultimo, la politica di cui c'è bisogno. C'è bisogno di una politica su questo.
And finally, the politics that is needed. We cannot conceal the concrete risk inherent in its fundamental design that artificial intelligence might limit our worldview to realities expressible in numbers and enclosed in predetermined categories, thereby excluding the contribution of other forms of truth and imposing uniform anthropological, socio-economic and cultural models. The technological paradigm embodied in artificial intelligence runs the risk then of becoming a far more dangerous paradigm, which I have already identified as the technocratic paradigm. This is precisely where your action, political action, is urgently needed. Just as the encyclical Fratelli Tutti, Brothers All, reminds us. It reminds us that for many people today, politics is a distasteful word, often due to the mistakes, corruption, and inefficiency of some politicians. There are also attempts to discredit politics, to replace it with economics, or to twist it to one ideology or another. But can our world function without politics? Can there be an effective process of growth towards universal fraternity and social peace without a sound political life? Our answer to these last questions is no. Politics is necessary. I think about what a pope once said about politics. It is the highest form of charity. It is the highest form of love. Politics is necessary. And I want to reiterate in this moment that in the face of many petty forms of politics focused on immediate interests, true statecraft is manifest when, in difficult times, we uphold high principles and we think of the long-term common good. Political powers do not find it easy to assume this duty in the work of nation building, and much less so in forging a common project for the human family. There is always the temptation of putting everything together. And what comes to mind is a famous novel from the start of the 1900s, an English book, futuristic novel that shows the future, a future without politics, a very uniform future. It's an interesting book, we should read it. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, my reflection on the effects of artificial intelligence on humanity leads us to consider the importance of healthy politics, so that we can look to our future with hope and confidence. I have said previously that global society is suffering from grave structural deficiencies that cannot be resolved by piecemeal solutions or quick fixes. We've got to go to the roots. Much needs to change through fundamental reform and major renewal. Only a healthy politics, involving the most diverse sectors and skills, is capable of overseeing this process. An economy that is an integral part of a political, social, cultural and popular program directed to the common good could pave the way for different possibilities which do not involve stifling human creativity and its ideals of progress, but rather directing that energy along new channels. This is precisely the situation with artificial intelligence. It is up to everyone to make good use of it, but the onus is on politics to create the conditions for such good use to be possible and fruitful. Thank you. And with that, the Holy Father's discourse at the G7 summit has finished.
Holiness, thank you very much for accepting our invitation, says Giorgio Meloni. Thank you. This is the first time that a pontiff has been to the G7, and your words are really an inspiration for all of us. Thank you. And also thank you for saying that you would stay now afterwards to listen to the other leaders' speeches, because we know that you have lots of things to do, so thank you for that. And so thank you. And now
we ask the press to go out.
Meloni switches to English.
The session.
And so that was the end of the Holy Father's address there to the G7. Again, the images have disappeared, but you heard there the Pope's speech, his address to the G7. It was, as Mrs. Meloni said there, the first time that the Pope has addressed the G7 summit, and he spoke about artificial intelligence. He said lots of interesting things.
If you want to listen back to this event at any time, you can find it on our Vatican News YouTube channel and on our Vatican News website, where you can also find summaries of everything the Pope has been up to recently, and that is all accessible at www.vaticannews.va. But of course, please do also take a look at our Facebook, X and Instagram pages. Just search Vatican News on the social media of your choice. And thank you very much. My name is Francesca Merlo.
And I'm Joseph Torek.
And thank you to all of you who have joined us, and thank you for tuning in. Until next time, Laudetur Jesus Christus, praised be Jesus Christ.